what may be a key thing for one business may not be a key item to address in another business. So that's why you got to know the business and make a plan according to those business measures that are in place. The big issue is, there's a lot of times that people in the security community, just like me, it's like, gosh, we got to teach these guys, they need to make sure that they not screw up like this. And, we can do so much to train these people, but saying that AI versus AI, the good guys versus the bad guys will be a thing.
Welcome to the Top Cyber Pro podcast, the show where we bring experts in the cybersecurity industry to share their valuable knowledge, experience, tips, tools, techniques, and resources to help you become a top cyber pro. And now, here's your host for this episode, Terry Thompson. It is currently predicted that the cybercrime market will be worth $10.5 trillion per year by the year 2025. And some people believe that we've already hit that number within the last year. And today we have cybersecurity expert and Top Cyber Pro Level 99 award winner, Bob Carver, to discuss this and so much more. Bob, welcome to the show.
Hey, glad to be here, Terry.
100%, Bob. I just want to say first and foremost, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come here and share your thoughts about cybersecurity today. So tell us, how did you get into the cybersecurity industry? And more importantly, how did you get started at Verizon Wireless?
Sure. Well, I was working at Fidelity Investments doing network monitoring, making sure that all the traffic was going well through the network, that we had the proper capacity, that all the network devices and telecom devices were working properly, make sure that if there was a dual power supply, that both power supplies were working all right, alarming and that sort of thing. And they were offers to say, hey, would you like to come and work on this security project? And I would just raise my hand. I said, yeah, that sounds cool. Why don't I check that out? And one of my first projects that I had there was making a key management system. It's where you have the security keys and you change the security keys on a regular basis. So the channels are encrypted and all the data going past the network is all encrypted, so nobody could sniff that data. That particular computer that I built was built with embedded Unix. And I believe, we're getting into details here, probably AES 256, which was DoD type certified back in 1999. And anyway, I built that, and probably billions of dollars of financial transfers happened over that network due to that key management system. But anyway, I kept on volunteering for more projects. There was a network access control system, and I'd volunteer to be a beta tester for that. And then we'd forward the first early intrusion detection alarms, that sort of thing. So that's how I first started. But as far as Verizon Wireless, that was a whole different story. What happened is Paris Hilton got her phone hacked, all of her information related to her phone hacked. Wow. On T-Mobile back in around 2004, 2005. And all of a sudden the execs started saying, I think we need to hire some full-time folks to start doing this security monitoring and instant response. Back then, they had some people to monitor firewalls and actually configure the firewalls, but they didn't really have full-time people to monitor the security and actually do incident response. And as a result, I was out of, who knows, a dozen or 24 people that they interviewed. I was hired employee number one at Verizon Wireless.
I love that, and nothing like a high profile person to just kind of dive right on in as well too. Yeah. So let's go, speaking of diving in, let's go ahead and dive on in. I want to talk about risk management, developing a cybersecurity risk management program for companies. It's really like making a custom made suit. And I love, we talked before and you talked about how it's making a custom suit or a highly tailored dress. But I'm here to tell everybody that's listening to this, it's really not. It's not one size fits all. And I think that's where a lot of people, a lot of companies really fail because they're looking for that easy, that cookie cutter solution to manage the
Mhm.
security of their networks. And that's just not the case. So tell us, what factors really need to be addressed when developing a risk management program?
Sure. I think the main thing that we need to do when we go into discuss a business is to know their business.
Mm.
What are their key business processes? What are their key systems? What are, do they have SaaS programs, where they're software as a service? Um, what are their email systems? Do they have backup systems in place? You know, again, every business, like you said, is completely different. And what may be a key thing for one business may not be a key item to address in another business. So that's why you got to know the business and make a plan according to those business measures that are in place.
Mhm. I love that. One of the things that I used to do is I used to come up with system diagrams. So as you're in the planning phase, as you're analyzing things and you're planning, you're looking, you're doing all putting all these things together. How important is diagramming? Because I know that it worked really
Yeah.
well for me, but what are your thoughts
I
about
think
diagramming?
I think diagramming is good, and I think to add on to that, I think asset management is key. And of course, a lot of times the diagrams would include the assets in a network, but then having a list of assets, you wanted to know what those assets do. Do they have the keys to the kingdom? Those crown jewels in a particular system, how they connect to your network, do they connect to the internet or not? On and on. So yeah, it's a key thing, and that's as far as that goes on a network diagram too. You might even consider doing some networks where you have more than one network, where certain networks don't touch each other, and it makes it more difficult for cyber criminals to exfiltrate data or
Mhm.
get into those key
And I know
systems.
that we talked about that a little bit before we went live here today, and that's separating systems and assets and resources and networks. How important is that degree of separation, and what are your recommendations for degrees of separation?
Sure. I think, well, if you do have some key systems, those crown jewels, and especially when it comes to data, uh, you probably don't want one to have that directly accessible to the internet if at all possible.
Mhm.
And then you might not even want to have it directly accessible to another computer. Quite often, a lot of larger companies will make sure they have a bastion host, or they may even have something in place that has access controls. It might try to identify the person that is coming into that system, maybe not only the person, but maybe identify the device,
Mhm.
and then you can get into an intermediate system, and then that intermediate system may tell you, okay, you have admin access, or you don't have you may have read-only access to the system, and basically to put many controls in place to limit the access to just the general public or somebody that's happened to be getting into your first layer of your network.
And what about insider threats? Because you talk about access, and I know that insider threat is a real thing as well too. And there's certain people that have certain levels of access. Maybe they should not have those levels of
Sure.
access. But how do you mitigate the risk with for insider threats?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it, you have access controls that, you have a certain amount of employees that will have zero access
Mhm.
to certain systems. And then you have others that may have only read-only access, where they can't actually change anything in that system. And then uh, when you only have maybe just a very few, very slim amount of people that have full admin access. So, that's basically how it's done.
Yeah. And then
We
how is that determined? Is that just position, need to know leaders? Is that an
Yeah,
ultimate leadership decision or?
yeah, quite often it is. Somebody somewhere has to decide who has what type of access. I know, uh, as I've continued to progress in my career, There was a lot of times since at one time I was manager of the whole group, they wanted to give me full admin rights to every system. And I said, wait a minute, whoa, I'm not the admin of this system anymore. I want to be able to see what's on the system, so please give me read-only access, not admin access. I don't want to be able to change anything. There were times that it was necessary in my career where I did have to have admin privileges, where to update the operating system or make major changes, or even dole out that access to the other people that were getting access to those systems.
Yeah, I've seen it from both sides, and it's frustrating from a leadership perspective versus a customer or client perspective. And I've
Sure.
experienced both sides of it. I'm sitting here like, man, like just the other day, like I had full access, and now I'm a customer and a client, so I have
Oh,
to
sure.
that. I argue with my IT guy all the time. I'm like, look, dude, I can do your job. I've been in charge of people like you, and
Yeah.
it's one of those things
Right.
where
Yeah.
I,
Oh,
I
I've
have
been there.
I
I
have to
I
know my role.
I remember I had admin access to 40, 50 major systems for a worldwide network.
Mm,
And all of a sudden we didn't have that access anymore. So like, no, there's going to be another team taking over all those systems.
mm,
And you get a hold of some junior admin. It's like, wait a minute. I said, this is not how you do it. Yeah, I mean, I could tell that they didn't know what they were doing.
uh-huh.
Get at the command line. Okay. And then I'd have to go through all the commands one by one. And
Yeah.
this is what you're going to have to do. And I just say, hey, I did your job
Uh-huh.
just 30 days ago.
Yeah.
And I know how this system works. So,
I had to learn how to take a step back from that, because as much as
yeah,
I want to help, as much as I want to like interject or do, it's like I just have to let the guy do his job and be like,
yeah,
hey,
yeah.
this,
A lot of times you're better off just letting them do their job. Although there's times when you do need a certain level of access and you don't have it, then you sometimes, unfortunately, may have to interject a little bit.
yeah. So I want to talk about assessing impact. So look, when an incident happens, and they're going to happen, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And
Sure.
when these incidents actually happen, how do you monitor for ongoing implications that are really not so visible? Because we can kind of capture the things
Mhm.
that really do impact the network, but what about those little neatly tucked away things that might not necessarily trigger any systems? How do you approach those things that are just not so visible?
Yeah, well, I often use the word we all need in this industry. We need one, visibility, and two, context.
Mm,
And of course, this is in two different areas too. One, you need it on a network, the traffic flows going to and from your networks, even if possible, lateral movement. And I know a lot of companies don't have that visibility in the lateral movement, meaning traffic going from one side of the network to another side of the network, or from one computer on your network to another computer on your network. But then
mhm,
also critical have access to data flows to and from your network, to and from the internet.
mhm,
Then you go onto the endpoint, or whether it be a server or laptop or desktop computer, to know what's going on those systems, to know the process that are happening. And then you may want to tie those data flows that you see in network security to endpoint security, and like what's going on the endpoint. So
mhm,
anyway, that's sort of in a basics
mhm.
what's important
Yeah,
to
because
tie
I
those
mean,
together.
you really have to understand data flow, and you have to understand how a lot of that works in order to really troubleshoot things properly. I mean, you could literally, and if you don't understand that, you could literally make a wrong decision because you don't understand, how things flow, and how that's the reason why I mentioned the flow chart earlier, the diagramming. I
Sure.
think that once you have a diagram of your network, your system, your resources, your people, whatever the case may be, I think that it'll help, especially with troubleshooting.
Sure. Absolutely. You got to know where those data flows are going to be happening and what processes are actually uh, you're using on a regular basis.
Yeah. So what are some common mistakes that you see companies make, or even people making out there? When it comes to planning, managing, mitigating
Yeah.
risks, what are some mistakes that people are making?
Well, simple mistakes is not updating your browser on a regular basis,
Yeah.
um, not having any plan for your business email security.
Mhm.
Those are some key ones right off the bat. And also, I mean, updates to operating systems happen quite often. Sometimes often is one time per week nowadays. So you definitely got to check that. And then the firewalls and routers, they need to be updated from time to time too.
Mhm. You know, and I can relate to that, you know, because I run multiple websites, multiple on different platforms, and patching, updating, it's painful.
Oh, it
It
is.
truly is. It's painful, but it's an absolute must. I'm telling you, there are security threats that are happening all the time, and you really don't know what, you know, what are the new threats that are emerging,
Sure.
and how can that affect your systems that are out there. So, what are some resources that if somebody wanted to stay abreast of like what's out there, what is a good resource that people can be aware of?
Well, I don't have the URL off the top of my head, but
Mhm.
CISA puts out a report on a regular basis, CISA.gov, that tells you about the latest vulnerabilities in various devices, and it may be in operating systems, it may be in network, devices, it can be in even IoT and industrial control systems. They do a pretty good job. No, but they've gone one step past that. They'll even show an occasional report where they'll show the top attacked devices that have current vulnerabilities,
Mhm.
which is real key to help you to understand which devices you need to update first.
Mhm. And that's important because you know you could have devices that you know you have to update, or systems or plugins or whatever apps, you know, that you have to update in order to in order to make sure that everything is secure. Now here's one thing as well too, and I kind of want to dive into this, and this is what
Sure.
I truly believe, and that's apps, you know, that are on devices. For example, you got your Apple, you got your Android, and then you got
Mhm.
web applications that are out there as well too.
Sure.
Can we really stay ahead of that? Because a lot of these things get updated all the time, and now next thing you know, the app doesn't work. You can't do this because, well, you have to update. And I'm primarily talking about third party type stuff here. I think
Sure.
this falls in line with like maybe the Internet of Things type stuff.
Right.
How do you stay? How do you stay current and relevant? Is, or can you?
It's tough. It's tough. I mean, large companies usually have entire teams
Mm,
dealing with that sort of thing.
yeah.
As an individual, you'll just have to go through one by one and see which one can be updated. Some of the updates may update directly from an application. Others, you may have to go to a website and actually download the software and then manually update it that way.
Mhm.
So it's not an easy thing, no doubt. But it's well worth it because quite often that's the way people get in, is when a vulnerability becomes known,
Mhm.
people start attacking it. And if you're connected to the internet, it will be attacked. It's just a matter of time. So yeah,
Yeah.
keep on updating.
100%, you know, and I know myself, I have to remind myself, like I have to set notifications, you know, update your stuff, you know, update your
Yeah,
plugins, update your site, update, you know, all these different things. What actually, I think it comes down to awareness and training. I truly
yeah.
believe, I think it comes down to awareness and training, and bottom line up front, the average person, number one, they're just not formally trained. So therefore they're not aware. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah. Well, I think it becomes a issue of awareness,
Mhm.
and somehow everybody needs to have a certain level of awareness and find out, monitor what's going on with things. You may even if you just physically check to see if there's an update available for your operating system on your computer at home or small business. Again, the same thing with the browsers.
Mhm.
Chrome browser had an out of bounds patch that just came out like Friday, I think.
Mhm.
So, and that's not just, the thing is, people think, oh, well, I guess that's only, I don't have Chrome. Well, what if you have Brave or Opera or one of the other Chromium based? There's going to be an update for those real soon too. So don't think just because they said Chrome was needed to update, don't think that your browser may not need an update, because your browser may be based on Chrome or the Chromium project, which
Yeah,
is the underlying
exactly.
project.
And that comes down to like programming languages as well too. So I know that there's different, is there anyone from your perspective, is there any one programming language that's less vulnerable or
I
maybe
I
more
don't
vulnerable?
I don't really think so. There may some people that may give an opinion on that,
Okay.
but I mean Python is real popular language right now, and it's used in AI a lot,
Mhm.
and machine learning, that sort of thing. But Python has also been used to write malware. So,
Mhm.
you know, is it more secure? Well, I think it depends on
Uh-huh.
what side of the fence you're on.
Yeah, like we said earlier, it's really not a matter, it's really not a factor of like if you'll be attacked, it's really kind of a matter of
Right.
when. But I have to ask, can we really fully protect ourselves? Is that possible?
Yeah, it's not, put it this way, it's not financially feasible to attempt to 100% protect yourself
Mhm.
because it would probably cost more than all the assets you're trying to protect, all the databases, all the computer systems, all the network devices.
Mhm.
It would just be way too expensive. So that's where you have to pick and choose. That's where you have to do some sort of risk management program. That's why you need to know the business and the business processes and the key assets in that business to
Mhm.
understand where you need to put your focus on.
Yeah, I love that. Let's dive into data protection because that's a huge conversation right now other than AI, but we'll cover AI here in a bit, but I want to dive into data protection because there's a lot of companies here lately that bottom line up front, they're failing. They're losing data, data's being leaked. What are the biggest threats to data protection and how can we actually mitigate them?
Of course, the one that's been in the news the most has been ransomware, of course. Um, and it's sort of evolved over time too in recent times. Ransomware, they wanted, at first they were encrypting all your data, your disk drive, and then they would try to extract a ransom to get your data back. Now they go ahead and they exfiltrate all that data, and some of them even stopped encrypting the hard drive. They just said, why screw with that? We're just going to take all your data and we're going to publish it on the web, dark web, or put it up for sale if it's
Mhm.
critical enough or interesting enough. If they have people's names, addresses, phone numbers, and possibly even things like social security numbers and birth dates, that sort of thing, they'll just put it up for sale. And then anyway, they'll try to get the ransom out of the victim.
And what types of data are really more at risk though?
Well, probably one of the biggest ones is healthcare data.
Mm.
Uh, Having a uh, all the full information that's required for somebody to being a patient at a hospital, with insurance, with Social Security, and like I said, name, address, phone number,
Yeah.
uh, that sort of thing. That's probably one of the most valuable out there right now, and that's probably one of the reasons why healthcare providers have been hit so much over the last 5 or more years.
Mhm. And when you talk about data and and we mentioned training and awareness a bit ago, I want to share like something with you here real quick because I saw a friend of mine who basically exposed her phone number in a video trying to rant and
Uh,
rave about TikTok. And it was so crazy, posted a video about, here's how you don't get your data out there. You delete TikTok and basically made this video and shared it out on Instagram. And during that video, her phone number popped up on the screen. She posted that thing like a champion. And I was like, oh my goodness. I almost called her. I was like, hey, you
yeah,
just exposed I just got your phone number from an Instagram video that you posted. I was like, no, you know what? Let me just DM her. So I sent her
yeah,
a DM. I said, hey, you just exposed your phone number in a video ranting about the same thing that you just exposed yourself
yeah,
to.
yeah,
So it comes down to training and awareness. And I
yeah.
truly believe that annual training requirements is a real thing. I know when in the military and the corporate world, we have annual training requirements.
How,
Um,
how did she respond to your call?
very professionally. So it was
Good,
because
good.
the way that I positioned the message to her, I was like, look, I mean this with like as much love as I can, but you literally just exposed your phone number. So
Yeah,
once again, if you know, like, and trust someone, which we followed each other on Instagram for a little bit, so it was not like I
right,
was reaching out to a complete stranger.
right.
But
Well, good.
the average person, that unknowingly puts that data out there within the world, it's one of those things that just drives us nuts. And we talked about that earlier about the soldiers in the checkout line, people at the checkout line just randomly talking about things and putting things out there. And it comes down to training and awareness, I truly believe. But how do we solve that problem, or can we ever really solve
Yeah.
that problem? Does it come down to, I know, in companies and we have annual training requirements, but the average
Yeah.
everyday person out on the street,
It's
they don't have
it's
that.
it's tough. And I think this is something that almost every company should do a certain amount of training.
Mhm.
But I tell you, even with that training, we see people that continually do make mistakes.
Mhm.
They click on the bad links. They may have clicked on an attachment that you shouldn't be clicking on, or I mean, they download stuff that they shouldn't be downloading on their computer. Um, there was there's the guy that's in charge of the NSA called Rob Joyce,
Mhm.
and I've said this sort of thing. I may have not said it the same way he said it, but it says, assume humans are humans and bad things are going to happen. And the big issue is, there's a lot of times that people in the security community, just like me, it's like, gosh, we got to teach these guys, they need to make sure that they not screw up like this.
Yeah.
And we can do so much to train these people, but there's going to be people that just don't quite get it. Either their job is so stressful that they can't concentrate straight and they're going to make mistakes, or uh, anyway, they just do bad things. And actually, even uh, NSA's Rob Joyce admitted that if the right email was put in front of him, he probably would click on it. And I understand that. I've run into that a few times, and luckily I was on a different type of device than the malware behind that system was looking for, and I was saved. Now there's other time, there was a long time ago where I wasn't on the right device, and the device got compromised. But it's been, luckily, knock on wood, quite some time where I've had that situation.
Yeah.
So I think we got to develop in the security community as a whole to figure out better ways to protect end users,
Mhm.
regardless of what they're going to do, because they're going to screw up from time to time.
Yeah. And I know, once again, that's a huge conversation, especially with recent news of TikTok, for example, being banned. And it's one of those things that I always tell people. I was like, look, the data that you put out on the internet is really up to you. You can choose to put correct information out there or incorrect information or whatever the case may be. But it brings me back to a question of how much data is actually required in order to be on, apps and services. So like, for example,
Sure.
working at Verizon, being at Verizon, how much information is really necessary to collect from an end user?
Hmm.
Are we collecting too much, not enough? Where's
Yeah.
the right balance at?
I think that totally depends on the business and the situation.
Okay.
I mean, I can tell you over the last decade, I've told all my medical people that I deal with that you don't need my Social Security.
Mhm.
You have my insurance number here, and that's all you need. If you run into issues, let me know. But if you think I need my Social Security number, I'm going to need your last risk management report. That's a security audit of your systems. And of course, none of those doctors I ran into have had a security audit. There's maybe one place that was it's a teaching hospital. They may have had a little bit of an audit, but as far as the independent doctors and dentists and stuff,
Yeah.
they're not even close.
So I want to dive into contingency operations. We all take things for granted until we really need to make a move happen. And I know we've had disasters that happen worldwide. How do we handle disasters? What would be your best recommendation to handle disasters, known or unknown? How do
Wow.
we handle that?
Yeah, that's a pretty big question there. I think, again, we go back to those critical systems of a business, and do if there's a critical computer system and say a database, that sort of thing, is it so critical that you might, well, first of all, you're going to need backups.
Mhm.
You're going to have multiple backups. Even a small business needs a minimum three backups.
Mhm.
Ideally, one backup offsite. Larger businesses may even be more sophisticated than that. But then, do you need a backup system? Where you have a computer where they're both the databases are being updated in synchronization. So if one system goes down, the other system can replace it.
Mhm.
It's a key thing, and it's even the thing with routes and routers. I mean, larger businesses, and I've even seen a few smaller businesses where it's extremely critical. They actually have two internet providers, the ISPs, internet service providers, where they'll have from one side of the company, they'll have one internet provider come in and have access to the internet, and another internet provider come in from the other side. And so that way, if one goes down, they have a backup. And it can, things go wrong. I mean, it's amazing. One of the top reasons why internet service providers, their service goes out is construction. That the people that are digging with these backhoes and these big graders and stuff, they go plow through an internet line, and they
I'm
just
laughing because that's happened to me.
and they just take it out, and you don't know how long the service is going to be out.
Yeah.
So there's you have to do a risk management plan and to just decide. One of the things you got to say, how much money are you going to lose by being out of business for, like, say, 1 hour,
Mhm.
being out of business for one day, and then you start looking at all those critical connections, critical processes, critical servers, critical software, and what is the best plan of action within your budget.
Yeah, and that's so true right there. A lot of people talk about budget as well too. You talk about speed, you talk about cost, you talk about all these different things, but one thing that you don't really talk about is the security of systems. And I know Verizon, I have Verizon myself, and I love it.
Good.
It's the speed, it has the cost, it has everything that I'm looking for. But the average user, I think, they put that into consideration and only that into consideration. So
Sure.
how would you I guess talk to someone that's looking to make a switch from one service to another about
Right.
security, and how would you position security as a bigger conversation other than speed or cost?
Sure. Well, I think one of the things you have to look at too is what is the record of the company?
Mhm.
Have they exposed customer data to
Mhm.
the cyber criminals?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, some of the competitors that we have exposed data sometimes even multiple times.
Mhm.
So is it worth saving, $10 a month or something to have that? The other thing is you have to look at of course, you say the quality of service.
Mhm.
Some of that has to do with speed. Some of it has to do with, I remember I was many years ago, my service was with another competitor, and I would drive through certain parts of town, and I'd be talking to my wife on the phone coming home, and the just drop calls,
Mhm.
how much do you have to put up with that, and how much is that worth to you a month, that sort of thing too. And of course, like you say, overall security. Now, some things you can publicly find out, and there's other things it may be a little more difficult to find out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know my own company puts in a lot of money
Yeah.
towards those type of goals to keep our customers safe.
Yeah, well, from a marketing perspective, that's a big conversation, especially with a lot of data and a lot of other companies that are making the news with hacks and this, that, and the other. That's definitely one way of looking at it from a marketing perspective, a marketing angle as well too. It could present itself as a target, as like, oh yeah, well, we got something for kind of a thing. So I think that you really have to find that balance of, do you really put yourself out there by saying things like that? Or do you really
Yeah.
just kind of hold back onto that? It's like, you
Yeah.
cross your fingers, tap on wood, whatever the case may be, kind of a deal. But look, at the end of the day, it goes back to what I said earlier. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And it comes down to risk mitigation. You know, how do you really, do you worry about mitigating things as much as possible, or do you worry about solving the problem when it happens, if it happens? And I think that's what ties into what I mentioned earlier about having a contingency operation plan. I love that how you position that, because a lot of companies, small businesses, don't think about that. They don't think about, well, gosh, what if this breaks? What if this goes down?
Right.
What if I'm hacked? What if whatever? Now you've got a small mom and pop shop that has to close down because
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah.
And it's
I,
crazy.
I talked to somebody with a small business, and they asked, well, what did I do for a living? And I told them I dealt with security of a major, Fortune 20 type company. And they said, oh, well, we got a guy that does that too. And it's like, so how is he doing that for your company? Oh, he installs the antivirus on our computers. It's like, I said, well, that's, I don't know, at least 5 pay grades below mine, the guy that does that. So and I do way more than, I don't do any of that.
Yeah, there, once again, you have to put as many measures in place that you possibly can, and just
Right.
always be on the lookout.
Sure.
And, and it comes down to a lot of different things. So I kind of want to switch over to the Internet of Things. And I think that we've been leading up to that as well, too, because I think a lot of people don't understand what the Internet of Things is. Even like the cloud, for example, is like, what's the cloud? Is it out there? What is it? What exactly is the Internet of Things?
Yeah, Internet of Things is pretty much, really, if you think about it, it's almost anything that's connected to the internet. But generally, when we're talking about the Internet of Things, we're talking about, say, your Apple TV, your Roku box, your Xbox. It could even be a webcam, whatever is connected to the internet. And many of these items, especially if you're just looking at price only, they're made at a very basic level in China. It was very, very basic coding and very little security in place. Personally, at home, I have a separate network just for the Internet of Things, and it does not touch any of my computers, even printers, anything. It doesn't have access to anything else on the network, because I'm concerned about the security of some of those things. Now, the other thing is, some of these Internet of Things, if you're lucky, if it's one of the major companies, it may have occasional security updates, but usually it's more functional updates instead of security. But a lot of the devices that are at a price point where, it's mass adoption at, cheap, quite often you'll never see an update again. As long as it works once the first time, that's all they care about. And it may put your systems at risk. And you've probably seen some of the horror stories of, say, baby monitors that, all of a sudden people are, cyber criminals are talking to the babies, or they're exporting the videos of the babies and you can see it on the internet, or they do threatening things through these things, or webcams. They may see things that should be normally private because somebody just kept their computer and their webcam up all the time, and it got hacked. And
that's some scary stuff. It really is. And I think that the average person just does not really think about those things. Like our phones, for example. Alexa's always listening. Siri's always, I got to be careful what I say, because I don't want my phone to go off here.
Yeah.
Look, here's the thing. A lot of people don't really understand. It's like you want things easy. You want things simple. It's like you want all these things that's constantly connected. But I have to ask, should we really be constantly connected? Should we all be on?
Well, I can tell you, I installed Alexa one weekend morning. Somebody gave me Alexa just for kicks, and well, not for kicks. They just gave it to me as a present, and I installed it, and I looked at it for a while, and by the end of the day, I uninstalled it and decided that I really didn't want it on my network all the time. I didn't want anything listening. And of course, unfortunately, quite often we have phones that are listening to us, like you say. So I sort of attempt to be a little old-fashioned and try not to have many of those devices. I do stream TV,
Mhm,
but that's what I've limited to one device now.
mhm,
I try not to have any of those devices on my network. I've seen too many things happen. Um, for example, I've seen somebody that installed home security where they have, the cameras and that sort of thing on. And I was looking at their system and I saw a constant stream of information going to China.
mm,
And it's like, I asked the person, I said, do you know what data is going to China from your computer?
mhm.
Says, no, I don't know. And it's like, well, if it could be more than just your security monitoring system at home. I
Yeah,
said, if I were you, I would just take it off that system because
mm,
you don't know what they're going to be doing. Not only that, if that's a constant stream, and especially to and from, but it was more, it was more away from his computer, they could be downloading malware to computer, and the next thing you know is they take control of your computer too. So,
yeah.
but the
And
same thing.
we talked about patching, we talked about all these different systems, Internet of Things, so on and so forth. I want to dive into encryption because I truly believe that encryption is important, and a lot of people really understand it, don't understand it. Like, for example, you go to an average website,
Mhm.
people don't know if it's secure or not. You got HTTP, HTTPS, you've got different things that are encrypted versus non-encrypted. You got two-factor authentication. You got all these different things that are out there. What role does encryption play within security?
Well, it plays a lot of roles. One of the things, and this is sort of a sideline to what piling on to what you just said. I just recently put out a video of how to set up DNS so the settings on your computer and your router can be DNS over HTTPS or DNS over TLS.
Mhm,
So just so you know, most ISPs usually have their own DNS servers.
mhm,
And the vast majority of time, that DNS traffic is all unencrypted and in plain text.
mhm,
And that means that if somebody's in the right position, they can sniff your DNS traffic and they know where every place that you're going and logging in, that sort of thing. Also, quite often your ISPs, many of them will resell the data based on your DNS traffic.
mhm,
So that's why I made a video and recommendation on moving to DNS over HTTPS
mhm,
or DNS over TLS to a separate DNS provider to do that domain lookup of the various websites. So people would be more secure, and they would it would be very difficult to see the traffic where you were going. So that's just one example.
mhm,
There's of course other examples too, like databases. If, databases, sometimes if they're critical, they're encrypted at rest, but then you want to ideally go one step further and also have it encrypted during the actual data flows
mhm,
in motion. So but then now the other thing, I mean, we talk about this too. One of these days, quantum computers going to be in place, and a lot of the encryption we have in place currently now, like I talked about before earlier, the AES 256 that used to be DoD compliant, um, can be broken by quantum computing.
mhm.
So the
And
next
that
step is,
and that
go
leads
ahead.
us into AI because there's a lot of hype over artificial intelligence here lately. And computers are getting faster, AI is getting smarter, so on and so forth. There may be a lot to unpack here, but I do have a couple of things specifically
Sure.
I want to target here. But
Yeah.
what are your thoughts about artificial intelligence? I know myself, I've embraced it. I love it. What are your thoughts
Sure.
about AI?
Oh yeah. Well, I publicly started in some speeches at conferences, major conferences, 2018. Although my idea of this was even before 2018, but publicly in large forums like entire European Union security conference, saying that AI versus AI, the good guys versus the bad guys will be a thing.
Yeah.
And I also stated that in front of the International Monetary Fund in 2019, on a couple meetings they had in front of 190 countries. It is starting to be a thing. There is some tests of that adversary AI that is starting to happen now, and it happens fairly quick. They want to find out where the vulnerabilities are as quickly as possible, and they want to be able to attack those vulnerabilities. But also some of the software that's out there, there's some software out there now, some malware that they go through a whole program, and they'll stair step to find out, to identify the asset, what kind of asset it is, what type of operating system, what vulnerabilities does it have, and then they start trying to decide, okay, what way would we attack this, and they start attacking it from different methodologies. And a lot of this is sort of a basic portion of AI, which is called machine learning, that is doing this now. But we're also starting to use machine learning and neural networks in being able to, I would say, combat some of those attacks too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that AI is going to be huge, especially in the medical field as well too. I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of ways in which AI can be used, and I think that you know, when AI came out, of course, you're going to have people that are for it, people that are against it. The end of the world is here. It's all going to happen. Robots are going to take over.
Right.
AI is going to start programming this and all that. You know, it's that end of days kind of mindset that a lot of people have. Look, I've embraced it. We're not going to be replaced by AI, but I truly believe that people that embrace it and learn how to use it, they're going to be relevant. And I think that there's already jobs being you know, created from this. And if you embrace it, you learn it, you figure it out. I truly believe that it's not only the current, but it's going to continue to evolve and be the future as well too. But I have to ask, can AI really be used to improve cybersecurity defenses? And if it can, how do you believe that it can be?
It can. One of the things that I think that it may take a long time before it gets to the point where it's completely autonomous for every situation. But I think right now, I think it's a tool that can be used to speed up a process, to where you're partnering with a human being. And I think that's where we need to be looking at it. And I think overall, all types of AI, all variations of AI, I think it needs to partner with a human being, but definitely in cybersecurity, because what happens is the adversaries will come up with certain types of attacks or certain types of malware. But once the people that are protecting networks discover and figure out ways to counteract those attacks, then the bad guy will go to the next thing, something quite often totally different, or they'll make it just enough different where say a machine learning situation will no longer be effective in detecting or mitigating a situation. So it's a constant, cat mouse game.
So what type of ethical considerations should be considered when implementing AI?
Well, I think the main thing is, for one of the things that's coming up now, there's a lot of companies that have decided that they don't want their general population of employees using things like Chat GPTs or all the competitors that are on Google, and now they're going to be AWS too. They're concerned that they might put system information or information that could be proprietary to a company, and that eventually could go public by putting in that system. So, you know, because basically these systems just take data from 10,000 different directions, and they don't care where it comes from. And there's not always a lot of controls on what happens to that data once it gets inputted. So smart companies probably will go a little slow and not let their employees as a whole, go whole hog into that,
Mhm.
and possibly, have some proprietary projects that could get exposed.
Yeah, one of the greatest movies of all time is War Games.
Oh yeah,
I love that movie, and I think that's one of
yeah,
the movies that some people think about as well too. There's a bunch of movies that are out there, but I love War Games.
yeah,
How can we use AI in a gaming situation like that to either predict or prevent?
yeah. Well, let me tell you first. I have actually met the person that that movie was based on. So he was the guy that hacked into those computer systems on that, and I met him at Black Hat a few years back. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Um, yeah, AI. Well, go repeat that question one more time.
So it's one of those things to where you can use AI to either predict or prevent. And how
Oh,
how would you use AI in a gaming
yeah,
situation to prevent or predict?
yeah. Well, I think the main thing is the AI system has to be able to detect and see all the various situations that can happen in a place. Now, if you're talking about gaming on cyber, or it is gaming in general, but I think you look at all the different possibilities, and then you have to look at all those possibilities and say, how can you counter all those possibilities?
Mhm.
And then how not only you can counter them, but maybe utilize that situation and go one step further beyond that. And of course, that may bring into another area that could be a little bit controversial also, is offensive security too.
Yeah, I mean, it could definitely help leaders make different decisions, or at least predict certain things in order to prevent certain things as well too. So that's the reason why I mentioned War Games. It's one of those
Sure.
classic movies where it's like, man, if you could use technology to your benefit or your advantage, because I think a lot of times when you see, advances in technology, people are all automatically thinking of the bad things, the nefarious things, the evil things that can happen with it. But yet, what is
Right.
used for evil can also be used for good as well too.
Sure.
And I've embraced it.
And I think that's true with just about any technology out there.
Mhm.
Anything can be used for good or evil, and
Yeah.
we just hope that most people be using it for good.
Yeah, I love that, Bob. I just want to say thank you so much for talking with me here today. Before we close down, I want to give you an opportunity to share one golden nugget. One thing that you truly would love to share with everybody listening to this, that they can just kind of put in their hip pocket and take with them wherever they go. What would that one golden nugget be?
Sure. Oh gosh. Hey, make friends with a cybersecurity practitioner to be able to help you out and answer your questions.
Mhm.
One thing that you could do, follow me on LinkedIn and look at my posts. I post almost 365 days a year, and I'm one of the top 5 in the world to follow, announced by LinkedIn. So there's something new that I share every single day, at least one, sometimes two, three, four things. And also, I do have a YouTube channel also that I archive all my videos. And I've been trying to do a video once a week that tells all the basics of what you need to do to keep your family, your computers, and your network safe at home. So,
I love that. Do you have anything that you're currently working on or something planned for the future?
yeah, we are working some on machine learning, and also I do I do a lot of threat hunting.
Mhm.
So I look a lot at data flows and try to tie them back to processes on an endpoint. So
Mhm.
I basically, since unfortunately your firewalls and your endpoint security doesn't catch everything,
Mhm.
sometimes you need extra visibility and context
Yeah.
to know what's going on with your systems.
I love it. Bob, thank you so much for taking time talking with me here today.
You're welcome, Terry. Pleasure.
All right. Well, so thank you for watching this episode of Top Cyber Pro. If you want more tips, tools, techniques, and resources, then head over to our website, topcyberpro.com, along with getting connected with us over on all of our social media platforms for the latest cyber news, tips, and big ideas. Thank you for watching. Make sure you get connected with Bob over on LinkedIn. We'll have everything within the description of this video and this podcast right here. Get connected to Bob. I'm telling you, and you want to make sure that you get connected with his tips. He's sharing stuff 365 days out of the year. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next episode.